And this is where the BRICS currency has gone to, and not a lot of people are coming back to the redemption side of things, where individual citizens are going to be able to redeem over the counter in participating countries in that new BRICS gold system physical metals. America will be lost at that point. And if it went up to 100 million US dollars for one of the new BRIC currency, it would not even surprise me. I mean, you look back in history, these numbers are astounding, from Zimbabwe to Venezuela to anywhere in the past that you would look in hyperinflated currencies. What if it went to just 1 to 1,000 here in America? How devastating that would be. What if it went to 1 to 100? That would still be society-ending event for America.
Hello, and welcome back to Raised by Giants, where we talk all things spirituality. I am Ryder Lee. Tonight, we have returning guest David DuByne. David DuByne is the creator of Adapt 2030 channel on YouTube. He discusses energetic changes on Earth as the sun repeats its 400-year cycle of low activity, affecting global crop production, the economy, and everyone on our planet, with a timeline what you can expect from now to 2030 as society resets. Hello, and welcome back to the show, David. Thanks so much for coming back on, my friend. How are you doing?
Doing as well as we can do in this chaos phase of the world that we're seeing.
Yeah, I think I can't remember where I read it, but I think one of the countries is expecting imports for out of Canada in the United States. And the thing is exactly what you're saying, is how, and that we use the Mississippi River because it's the most economically feasible to transport all the grain through the Mississippi River. And then what happens when the river is too low, which you're right about the drought there, and what's going to happen when you can't get them. I think that I'm not sure on the number, but I think there's like 2,000 barges backed up right now on the Mississippi River. Do you have a more accurate number than that?
Well, it depends. It's the tugs that are pushing the barges. That's the number that the Coast Guard goes off of. And just to put it in a reference here of size, each one of those, as Ryder's talking about, just one grain shuttle, one barge, holds 70 18-wheelers full of grain in just one of those. So to even be able to fathom taking it off a barge and get it onto a rail car, or taking it off a barge and putting it on trucks to move it around, it's just literally physically impossible. The manpower is not there, and just the actual logistical free space to do that doesn't exist. And the number of semi drivers and having those commercial driver's license, that those guys are just dropping off left, right, and center, just retiring, quitting, not showing up, sick one day, who knows. But the driver fleet is extremely reduced as well. Visible signs of aging only get worse as we age because of the decrease in our naturally produced collagen levels. Every decade, our skin suffers from a 10% decrease in available collagen supply, which is why you have to start supplementing collagen if you want to keep your youthful glow. Collagen rejuvenates and renews your skin from the inside out with 5 supercharged types of collagen your body needs for youthful looking skin. By boosting collagen levels with multi-collagen, you'll help restore your skin's elasticity and thickness while reducing the appearance of wrinkles. Try it risk-free for 60 days. And take 51% off your order by going to healthwithadapt2030.com or clicking on that link in the description box below. After you order, it's going to be sent straight to your door along with a couple extra bonuses. It is time sensitive, so order now. And let's get on with the video. So put that in perspective. Let's use your number 2,000. Not again, Coast Guard will go on the number of tugs that are pushing. So it might have one tug pushing 20 shuttle or 20 barges down the river there. So if you're talking 2,000 of those tugs, then that's an astronomical number. But even just leaving it at 2,000, multiply that by 70, and that's how many, you're looking at just huge amounts of grain. And that doesn't even include those barges that are stuck in the mud that can't get loaded, because you go off the Mississippi and there's all these side channels there where they take those same grain barges, load them up into the side channels, and most of the grain loaders are off there, and then they push them back out to the main Mississippi channel again once they lash them together. Well, those are all completely non-functional at the moment. I was reading some incredibly in-depth articles. These guys go, man, my grandfather started this company 80 years ago and we've never had it this bad before, ever. So whatever's going on is something so far outside the magnitude of normalcy that it's really paralyzing the grain industry and our ability in America to export grains outbound or get farm inputs coming in like fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, which we don't produce in America anymore. So reliant on all these imports and exports, and we're just caught in the middle. We're just stuck, literally stuck in super glue right now.
Yeah, it's really a genius plan was to move all of the productions and production of crops, production of fertilizer, all this, to other countries and then export it to other countries. Because it's kind of like what you were talking about earlier, that America is going to be one of the last countries to be hit hardcore. And that's the genius part about it, because whenever it comes to America, we're not going to have anybody else to turn to, right? Because we don't manufacture a lot of our own stuff in America anymore. And then when they've moved it to other countries, they can control other countries, and other countries will do what we basically tell them to do, or we do it by force. That's been the way that we've always done it. A country doesn't like what we want to do, then we go in and invade, or we take over in some kind of capacity. So it was a genius operation for them to do it that way. Take all the producing, the plants, the manufacturing, move it to other countries and shut it down in other countries, so that we're just kind of stuck on this island in the end. And when everything, all these problems, when we see the effects of all these problems finally hit the United States, there's not going to be anywhere else to turn to. We're going to be stuck.
On a positive note, the second largest deposit in the Earth's crust for potash sits between the Canadian and the American border. So number 2 on the entire planet of fertilizer reserves is up on the Canadian-American border. Now, could we get that and utilize it? I mean, Mosaic had some problems after Hurricane Ian. That was, the main producing area for, what you consider mining of fertilizers, taking it from a rock and chipping it into flake or chip, and then, putting that in a bag and sending it onward. Could we get it together again and start a new manufacturing base here in America? And if yes, how long would that take? Because if you're going to weigh this out, you start going to these food shortages, people are going to want to make money off that. There's going to be huge opportunity, and nobody's going to sit twiddling their thumbs when they could make billions or hundreds of billions of dollars if they could get infrastructure in play again, old disused factories up and running again, whatever, refurb a plant. But how long is that going to take in comparison to how long the food shortages are going to run? At some point, there's going to be some real catalyst beside, some fires under the butts here to get people moving into action, because there's money on the table, sad as that sounds. But, how long do you think it might be before something could evolve back and we get sort of a resurgence again of American-made production, and people are going to have to start working for less money? But again, if we come into a hyperinflationary event, or fiat currencies don't, not fair trade across the planet anymore, nobody accepts anybody else's monies. At that point, then what your understanding of $1 is, or you $20 an hour, $30 an hour to do something, that'll all shift also. And maybe we'll go back into you're getting paid in silver coinage for the day's work or whatnot. But wages are going to have to significantly shift if we're going to be at all competitive enough to even feed ourselves. Because you can't have somebody demanding $50 an hour to go dig into a potash reserve when the world's starving and our economies are in full collapse. Like, that the perception of what you get for doing a task is going to shift here. It's already in the process of shifting. But when it really hits it here in the States, how much will people be willing to bend before they starve is the question.
Then the inflation too. I don't know if it's so much that there's an actual shortage of a lot of these products. I think it's just becoming super expensive for us to buy, right? The natural gas is becoming ridiculous, and you need natural gas to make fertilizer, right? And, even the farmers in the United States are spending double and sometimes triple the amount of money that they were just spending 2 years ago. And the reason for inflation is because of the endless money printing that we've been doing for a really long time. That's completely, wrecked everything. I believe wholeheartedly that the money supply has caused a lot of these problems, especially when it comes to inflation. Right when you just endlessly print money, which that's what we've been doing since the end of 2019, and spending billions of dollars and aiding other countries. That's really the definition of inflation, right?
That's why nobody wanted the gold standard. That's why they wanted to take us off. And I should talk in Nixon in the 1970s. The gold standard decoupling allowed that money printing to happen. Like, we wouldn't have this inflation if we were still backed by gold and on some sort of metals system. And you talked about invading countries. I mean, Iraq, Saddam, he wanted to move over to take euros for oil payment. And you look at Gaddafi, he wanted to have a gold-backed currency also for oil payment, agricultural payments, and everything else. But see, I love that movie, The Ants and the Grasshoppers. I forget the name of the movie. It was an animated movie, but they
Bugs Life?
portrayed it. Yeah, Bugs Life. Portrayed it so well that they were like, well, it won't matter if it's just one ant and that one mean grasshopper, like the leader, goes, if even they understand, if it's one, it turns into 100. And once they understand, then we are finished and our way of life will be taken from us. And they were talking about them being the ruling elite. It's the same thing. Once that first country starts to understand and put it out there that, hey, a gold standard means no inflation, real wealth, dynastic wealth will stay with your countries based on sound value money. What if it was a second country, then the third? Well, now the BRICS evolves out of that, taking the same principles, and they're just really angry at the states now. So, in terms of dollars, I definitely see hyperinflation heading into the states here. Maybe not tomorrow, but as Ryder and I sit here through these next 2 years, we are going to experience something hyperinflationary that Weimar Germany had experienced. All these dollars are going to come flooding home. Nobody's going to want the dollars once they get the BRICS truly up and running, where there's a gold-backed standard behind it. This paper system that America just has, the printing press running, will have zero value, literally zero value in the eyes of anybody, when I could walk over and take a new brick note and put it on a bank and get the actual physical gold across the counter. And that's what they are planning. The way it used to be here in America. Before they confiscated gold in 1933, you could take your note, the gold certificate, and silver certificates, and put it on the counter in a bank, and they would actually give you the physical piece of metal equivalent across the counter. Now, that's what the BRICS are going over to right now. That's why they've been buying so much gold, why it's all shifting eastward, why they're giving arbitrage opportunities like $45 over the price that you can get at the LME, because they want all the gold. They're willing to trade the worthless paper right now to get the physical gold. So if I got to spend an extra $45 to get an extra ounce of that physical shiny gold stuff over into Asia, I will pay you 55 worthless or 45 worthless US dollars that are just toilet paper at the moment to make sure I can get that physical piece of metal. And this is where the BRICS currency has gone to. And not a lot of people are coming back to the redemption side of things, where individual citizens are going to be able to redeem over the counter in participating countries in that new BRICS gold system, physical metals. America will be lost at that point. And if it went up to, 100 million US dollars for one of the new BRIC currency, it would not even surprise me. I mean, you look back in history, these numbers are astounding, from Zimbabwe to Venezuela to anywhere in the past that you would look in hyperinflated currencies. What if it went to just 1 to 1,000 here in America? How devastating that would be. What if it went to 1 to 100? That would still be society-ending event for America. But going into 1 to 10,000, 1 to 100,000, 1 to 1 million is generally where it rolls off to. And if we ever hit that point where you need $1 million US in the bank to get one equivalent dollar of the new BRICS money, then our country will really collapse until they get the money back up and running again, backed by something that we all agree that will have value. And it sure ain't going to be a digitized forest or a digitized fishery offshore, because I don't consider that value. Banks might, But unless we all have something, then I can walk up to Ryder and slap something in the hand and go, all right, here, I need your service. Or you could walk up to my farm and go, well, here's a piece of silver or gold, boom, in the hand. Here's your grain, here's some apples, whatever it is. And until that time comes, then it will never reset properly. And we'll be off in some, black hole land of just never ending zeros stacking up behind the money value of our exchange rate over here. And believe me, it is coming. So one thing to prepare for, if anybody, get metals now, because less than 1% of people in America have any precious metals. Less than 1%. That is going to be the thing that will save you and give you dynastic wealth, or even carry you through this, so you can purchase lands of people who might have it swooped from the bank, and then help them stay on their property to help you during this time of just complete implosion. So yeah, I have some silver. I'm going to buy my neighbor's farm. If the banks come down to swoop out their farm and kick them off the land, I'm going to smack the banker in the face with a bar of silver and go, they're keeping their land. That's my land now. They're not moving anywhere, and they're going to stay and farm that. Now you get the hell off. That's kind of the way it's going to be. I'm going to be using some of my, metals to be able to help neighbors stay on their property. And that's the way we all need to think, because if we all did that, then you would own the properties outright. It'd all be back my metals, and these banks could just jump off a cliff because they would have no power over anybody with your usury and their interest payments. Flip the table.
Absolutely. I agree with that. It's interesting that you're talking about how these countries, throughout history wanted to get off of this, Federal Reserve kind of money and get it backed more by gold, right? And something physical and something tangible that you can walk into the bank and then get that tangible thing, because it sat on the money. My grandma had some old money, and it literally said on there that you can go into the bank and exchange this money is exchangeable in gold, right? Which meant that you can go to the bank and exchange that money for an actual piece of metal. But I had heard back in like 2014, but that China was getting ready to create its own gold-backed currency with all the gold that they had in China, right? And that was I heard this back in 2014, and it was supposed to roll out by 2020, right? And look what they did to China, right? They had the boogity boos come out of China, so that just completely collapsed their entire plan right there. So I don't know, it's really interesting. And then also, we were talking about before the show, the because I've been listening to your mini Ice Age conversations on your other channel, phenomenal conversation that you're having over there with Mr. Godwin, and you were talking about, because we know that Bill Gates has purchased up a lot of the farmland in the United States, and then you were talking about on one of those shows with Mr. Godwin about how it's not even so much about the farmland, it's more about the water rights. And that blew my mind too, because I'd always been told my whole life growing up that whoever controls the water controls the world. And I don't think that people realize how valuable water is, because we've kind of taken water for granted, right? But we use water for everything in our lives, right? We use water to cook with. That's the most essential part. We use water to shower with. We use water to wash our clothes with, So if you don't even have the rights to the water, then that means that someone can turn it off. They can restrict it. They can do whatever they want with the water. So I think that the water is another problem that we really need to be looking at. And especially if that was the biggest reason for Bill Gates purchasing all this farmland, wasn't just for the farmland, it was also for the water rights.
Or water rights were number one, and it just was on farmland. Because if you look at Chile, one of the big things they had with they're trying to get a new constitution, but they're having some massive, massive riots down in Chile. One of the things they're trying to enshrine in the new constitution is non-guarantee to water rights for farms at all. None. All private. You buy it from a private company. Your right to water is going to be removed. And that's one of the reasons that they were so angry, and still are. And they have the right to be, that it was enshrined before that Yeah, you have the right to the water that's coming to be able to grow food for this nation. Farmers had that right coming off of a hillside to collect that for their farm usage. But it seems that what they're trying to pen into the new document down there is you don't have that right, that if it falls from there, it will collect somewhere, very much like the Oregon law, where you can't collect water from your roof, any rainwater from your roof, because eventually it will end up in the watershed, and that watershed would be sold off the rights. Well, they're trying to do something very similar, but on a countrywide basis here, even streams coming down off of mountains. So, I could see why Chile is super angry about that, and they should be. And you come into the states and we have all these different laws within the states on either surface water or subsurface aquifer water, how deep you can drill your wells, how many wells you can plunk down on certain, sizes of land. And there's a lot of regulation in terms of what you can take out of the aquifer, how quickly it's being replenished, what are the above ground water resources that are replenishing. But Gates has seemed to find these pivot points where either it's the pooling area, which Deborah Tavares talks about primary water. Those areas have been mapped out, and magically the farm purchases seem to be riding on those zones. Or it would be where above ground water resources are starting to come into pool in what you consider the beginning of the river system, in terms of all these tributaries that flow into what's now considered a river, that it controls that farmland too, where those tributaries are all coming to coalesce into one moving water body. Now, to be able to control that and control the water rights downstream for all that, that's some serious power in a hand of one individual. The way water rights are structured currently, like in the Constitution, there's not an enshrined right for you to have water rights to your aquifer. That comes on a state-by-state basis, and what your mineral rights are, and how these different states, you notice there's a whole handful of states that there's no farm purchases in. That's because if you do the work and look at the laws that give you rights to the aquifers, there's no way that he would be able to control that water resource as tightly as other places like Colorado, California, Oregon, Washington. There's some freewheeling states that are still like, water's everybody's right. It's not in a constitution or a state constitution, but it sure isn't. Like the person who goes over your land, you still have to give them a usage fee just because it transited through their property. You have to give them like 1 cent per acre foot or $1 per acre foot or something. There's laws like that all over the United States. Like just because that water moved through your property, it's much like an oil or gas pipeline. Those companies that are going to move how many cubic feet of gas across your land. Like my aunt has one of those pipes on their property up in Ohio from tons of gas up there. They get paid every month, just some royalty check, because they said, yeah, you can put a pipe across. It's a transit pipe. Every cubic meter or whatever they're determining the value up there, but they get paid every month. It's the same thing because they're using transit rights. So the same thing with the water. The water was going down the river ran through your property. So that farmer that's, 35 miles down there is still going to have to pay 1 cent an acre foot for every acre foot that's rolling through that they use on their calculable usage. And, you might think 1 acre foot, that's a huge amount of water. That's really 1 acre squared by a foot deep, like a whole family in America would maybe use 2 acre feet in a whole year, maybe 3. But when you get into agricultural, they're using thousands, tens of thousands, millions of acre feet per year here in America to irrigate fields and whatnot. And heaven forbid you talk about the ability to drill wells or not. Like Arizona is a real famous case study where, they let the Saudis come in and drill as deep as they wanted, take as much aquifer water as they wanted. So me or our families, we might have had our family farm up and running since the 1920s, and our wells are down at like 1,000 feet. Well, it's just scraping where the water table would be. And then the next well that would be drilled, and like, a decade or two later would have to go 500 feet deeper because the aquifer had, drained out, and actually those wells had run dry. So when the Saudis are coming in there to grow alfalfa, and they're just bailing it up and sending it back to Saudi Arabia. It's not even for sale. It's a private operation and then they're drilling down 2,000 foot wells and pulling as much water as they unregulated. Just pull it as much as on your land, drill deeper than your neighbor. They're going to run dry, but the deeper became the race is how deep the wells will go to be able to access that aquifer basin there. Whoever has the most money to drill the deepest well wins, because they were just pumping, like spraying out. They didn't even care. There was no like try to water management, or there's just like, circle out in the middle of the desert, and just there's bountiful sunlight. Who cares about the water? It comes from the aquifer. We can drill a deeper well. But all that alfalfa production baled, containerized, and sent out of our country. So these are, then you got to go a state by state basis and look where Gates is set up with all these things. It's very, very farmer who owns the water friendly laws, let's say. I'll leave it at that. Heaven forbid we talk about lobbyists. I'll leave that one out of the conversation for now.
Yeah. What was the excuse that they used, that you couldn't collect rainwater anymore because the rainwater was polluted? Right. It's got too many chemicals in it. It's a perfect excuse for people not to, collect water. It's poisonous, right? Can't drink it.
Well, I had a little bit different take on that, where the county or whatever area that would be in was saying that water would have hit the roof, it would have run down your gutters and would have made it into a stream, and that stream would have finally pooled into a lake or a river, which then we as the state or county municipality could have charged a fee for a farmer to use that water. And by collecting that 50 gallons off your roof, you're stealing from the state's revenue base. And that was at least one of the reasons in Oregon they were given. So yeah, look how many excuses there are. So you can't collect your water. It's poisonous. Oh no, it's a state revenue base. Oh, what is it next?
Then really what happens, David, when there's not enough resources to produce the food? We're kind of cut off from the water, or it's maybe not so much cut off, but tapped out at a certain point, or there's not enough people to process the food. I mean, how long until it's here in our front yard? I mean, Germany right now is, warning of food shortages, both frozen and fresh produce, because of the rising energy cost. But then, what happens when the energy crisis hits here? Because it's going to be hit with, some kind of hyperinflation. And then there's also a lack of product as well. That's a real recipe for disaster. So what's your timeline of events? How long do you think it's going to be before we see this in our face in the United States?
April 2023-ish. And this whole misnomer that we could have a resource shortage that's something of fiction that has been programmed into our mind to allow corporations to charge you higher prices. The only reason that there could possibly be a resource shortage is laws passed so you do not have access to those resources, which would be otherwise guaranteed to you under God, our planet. How many times have you ever been on an airplane and flown over the United States? Anybody out there flown over Canada? There is so much open land, so much underutilized land. It is shocking how wide open America is alone. And then heaven forbid, you fly over Canada going over to Asia, because it is like just 3 or 4 hours of straight tundra, farmlands, nature, forests, lakes and rivers, and you might be lucky to see a house down there. This whole misnomer of, there's all these shortages, we are humans, no, that is controlled bottlenecking of resources under the guise of a shortage. Because you look, the earth's so bountiful and so plentiful. Any of you who have ever grown a garden, you know how much your gardens can produce. Like, wow, way more than you could eat for a family. Now multiply that by everybody's backyards. And it's the point of distribution and manufacture that's falsely creating shortages. Who adjusts this supply and demand on a whim here? We're seeing it right now in a real play. If one thing I could hope in this dark chapter of history that's unfolding right now is that it wakes everybody up to, you understand, there's no free market. Everything is coordinated. There's no organic events happening. The shortages are turned on and off like a light switch. So is the value of your money. So is your unemployment or your employment, your access to job, money, food, energy. It's all completely controlled. And you understand the control device is in your face happening so fast, they're not even trying to mask it anymore that there was some freedom of market or open markets. It's just like, we're going to turn it off. And you're seeing it happen in real time. I really hope humanity does wake up. And if we have to go through this kind of dark phase, so it will awaken people that nothing that you think, and it's all an illusion, and the illusion comes crumbling down, and you see that everything that has been in the last 100 years, nothing has been real in terms of event wise. It's all planned. Everything we see, from crashes of economies, famines, if there's a famine because of just a Black Sea being blocked off, then you know that's an event, because they could unblock it just as quickly. So even when you see Russia, the bad guy, America, this, the Britons over here, the Germans there, the Poles here, ooh, everybody's fighting everybody. Are they really? Or is this just as an excuse as a global body of governance to explain away the food shortages, so no government gets taken out by angry citizens because they're starving? It's always point the finger elsewhere. It's not the sun. It's not that cycle back here again.